Hey Logan, what are you working on?
I'm painting some people.
Paint some people? What are you painting people for?
D&D.
D&D? Oh yeah, we got that this weekend, don't we? In a couple days?
Yeah. Can
Oh.
you print me up some stuff?
You need some stuff for D&D this weekend?
Yeah, just a small smidge of stuff.
I don't know how I do this to myself. I mean, I think I know why. I know exactly how I do this myself. I wait to the last minute to do the thing. So we have 2 days. We're going to need 30 cultists. That's how many Logan is asking for. And then he politely reminded me that I'm running a Necromancer in the D&D campaign. So the first day we're going to spend here is going to be just 3D printing as much as possible. So at this point in time, I have pretty much all of the cultists printed out. Assembling these, I have the skeletons printing in the other room. One of the things that's going to make this project go a million times quicker is using some accelerant. And what you do is you end up spraying a little bit of it on the base, and then you put glue on the other part. Once you put them together, you got about a second, maybe 2 max. You hold it together and it is pretty much instant set. Well, I've been putting these things together is I think I'm going to go with Slapshot. We're going to take it a step further and do some manual highlights. The printer's still going for the skeletons. The very next step here is to get all of these things primed. Now I like to use airbrush with this. Let's just work our way through and get all of these primed and colored. We just switched over to our gray midtone. We're spraying that. Now the trick with doing this with an airbrush, or really a rattle can or anything that you're spraying, is you don't want to spray it underneath. You want to make sure you're spraying from a 45-degree angle. You also need to think about where is your light source coming from. And so I've kind of done a little trick for myself here where I've lined all of these up on the plate into a giant circle. And I'm going to take that and I'm going to spray them down in an angle while I'm turning the turntable. And so while these are drying, my skeletons are just about finished up. So this is going to take a little bit to do, but with the cultists, I was able to grab the bottom of the tray of where the supports were attached to. I could hold the cultist, give it a little turn, all the supports came off. Makes this really, really easy. Now with the skeletons, I am not so lucky. Likely going to break at least a couple of these things during this process. So I'm going to have to be careful and snip. I'll try a couple and see how far I can push it, but it's just going to take me some time to work through. On to the dry brushing and the cultists. Now, while I was pulling those skeletons apart, I ended up breaking 8 of them during that process. I broke 8 of them during the printing process. So the cultists are going to be the last thing we get done today. I'm going to dry brush all of them, get them all done. Now the trick to dry brushing is that you don't want your paint to be too heavy on it. You also want a brush with really firm bristles. The other tip to dry brushing is you can control how much paint goes onto the model. Don't use a wet palette for this. You don't want to introduce that much moisture. So let's work through all of these cultists and get them all dry brushed. So we're on day 2. First thing that we need to do is get all of these skeletons brought over. The good thing about doing a large batch is that by the time you get to the last model, if you're doing like 30 or so, you can start at the beginning of the first one that you did, go back and do another coat of paint, and it's pretty much dry, assuming that you don't pool the paint. So I'm being very careful. All right, I had to run some errands, get ready for our D&D game that's going to happen tomorrow, with what we need everything done by. I was able to fix and re-glue some of those skeletons before I started airbrushing, so we have them all repaired now. But funny enough, during the airbrush process, I broke 2. So we're going to dry brush the skeletons, get those things done. It's going to be the same process we did with the cultists. I have to go a little slower with these though, because they are really fragile, and you have to pay attention to where I'm holding it and support it with the rest of my hand. And hopefully we don't break any more skeletons. All right, we broke more skeletons. We broke 5 skeletons. So before we get started doing anything in the next step, I'm going to glue those together because the next steps are going to require everything to be assembled. Logan was able to paint up one of the cultists for me while I was doing all the dry brushing. We're going to do a purple for the cloak. All right, so one of the things that you might have noticed while I was putting the purple on the cultist is I had a fidget popper down there. Now, one of the things that paint doesn't really do a good job of sticking to is silicone. So we can take the contrast paints, put them inside of this, and then when they are all done, they dry, say they dry overnight, go on the other side and pop them out and put the waste into the garbage. Our very next step here is we're going to use Briar Queen's Chill, and all of the accessories and the armor. It's like some stuff that kind of looks like leather armor that's like on the chest. I wanted something a little bit different than just brown. Since we're using a purple, I wanted a lighter pop of color. So we're going to use Briar Queen Chill. Now with both of these, and I didn't really talk about it with the purple, is I'm doing about a 1-to-1 ratio of contrast medium to paint. I want it to be diluted so it's thin. One coat has been more than enough to cover everything. Start putting on wild wood for all of the wood surfaces, all of the staves for the cultists, and we're also going to do the books that color as well. Our next step is going to be putting black Templar on all of the boots and on the skeletons, and then touch up the cultists just a little bit with some of those accessories like hilts, the knives, the leather that is on the cultists. I'm going to do that in black as well, so that's going to be the black Templar contrast. I really want them to have a Necromancer feel, and I've been thinking about this the whole time I've been painting these things. I'm going to use Hex Wraith Flame, which is another contrast color, going 1-to-1 with everything else. With this, I'm going to go 3 drops of contrast to 1 drop of Hex Wraith Flame, and we're going to see how this thing turns out. So let's give it a whirl. So these things are looking sweet. I absolutely love the way these look. Turned out way better than I thought. So let's go ahead and apply that now to the zombies. The zombies, kind of forgot about them up to this point. They need a little bit more love, so we're going to start getting them painted as well. And we're going to bring in some of the same colors we've been using this whole time. It is the morning of D&D, so we have about 4 hours left before these things need to be complete. So that means there needs to be some hustle. I'm thinking I'm going to put red on the fletchings, and I'm going to also do a red on their arrow holster. We're decided to use Blood Angels red. I'm actually making this a little bit drier, so I'm actually doing a more of a 2 contrast to 1. I want it to be just a little bit darker, a little bit starker there. So let's get to finishing up the rest of these skeletons. Before we get into the middle of doing all the next steps, I'm going to put some wash on the bases of the cultists, and for the other things, we're going to do a couple tone wash on these things, some nun oil over the whole entire thing. I'm going to start tackling the silver color on the cultists. I'm going to use some lead belcher, go in there and get all of the metal pieces that are in there done. And then also I'm going to do some highlighting with those as well into the things. I want them to have kind of like a silvery metallic sheen to the cultist. And since I had the silver already, I decided to transition over to the zombies and get some of their metallics done as well. Our next step for the skeletons, I'm going to do some bases. Now I want these bases to be a little bit different than the cultist bases. So I'm actually going to do an Agrax Earthshade wash. And I'm just going to load this baby up. We do not have a lot of time left, and it's right at the end. I am edging all of the bases. This was a pretty stressful project. I'm glad I did it. I probably didn't need to do the skeletons and the zombies. I could have just stuck to the cultists. It would have made this a lot quicker and easier, but sometimes we work better under pressure, and I was up to the challenge. We completed it. We managed to have our D&D session, and everybody loved the models. I think it's time to show you what the end result looks like. So here's the grand reveal. So I hope you enjoyed following us along as we went through this adventure of causing undue stress onto ourselves, where we decided that we were going to paint an unhealthy models in a very short amount of time. So you join us while we do that, and until next time when we see you at the table.